All right, Rebecca West. We're on to her. And the piece of hers that we read this week is the short story called Indissoluble Matrimony. Yes. So if you look at the written out lecture, there is a neat photo of Rebecca West. She looks very much like a flapper. She's got that bobbed hairstyle. She's got a like a bejeweled kind of headband type thing that the flappers often would wear. And then there's like some jeweled parts that come down. It's very 1920s, um, that whole era. Can't quite see what she's wearing beyond that, but it's a neat photo. There are several links in the written out lecture that you could check out if you'd like to know more about Rebecca West or her works. Um, she's got the Rebecca West Society, that website, and some others that have extensive biographical and literary information. Um, there is a linked article with intriguing commentary on the short story of Rebecca West that we read this week, Indissoluble Matrimony, and that's from The Guardian. There is a YouTube clip that is a teaser from a play about Rebecca West, so dramatizes the writer and her sentiments quite engagingly. Actually, that might be fun to check out. And you can listen to Rebecca West's short story that we read for class, Indissoluble Matrimony, because there is a free audiobook recording of it on YouTube, and I provided that link. Sometimes it's fun to listen to a story read aloud, right? We all loved getting read to as children, right? Or some of us, or anyway, it's fun to listen to audio tapes, especially since you can put those audiobooks on while you're doing other things, like maybe driving or doing chores. Like I fold laundry a lot of times when I listen to things because I want to keep my mind stimulated at the same time. So you could listen to it and then like also read it, to catch things that you may have missed while you were listening. For me, that's a good system that works for me. I always get the most out of it that way. All right, Rebecca West. She is British. She lived from 1892 until 1983 to 91 years of age. Yeah, she had a long, full life. She was born Cicely Isabel Fairfield in London, so an entirely different name. Cicely Isabel Fairfield. It's a very British name. Cicely Fairfield in London, to a Scottish pianist mother and an Irish journalist father. Her father deserted her family when Rebecca was only 8 years old. She moved in with her family minus her father, or sorry, she moved with her family minus her father to Edinburgh, Scotland, where she attended school. Actually, Edinburgh is famous for its really good schools, so probably a pretty cool place to go to school and a really neat town. So at least there's that. At 16, Rebecca left to try her hand at acting on the London stage. There, she read the Ibsen play Rosmersholm about a radical feminist named Rebecca West. Identifying with this protagonist and her beliefs, Rebecca, née Cicely, née means born Cicely, so she took the name of Rebecca West. So that's kind of neat. That became her pen name. But because of Rosmersholm, it's funny, I read Rosmersholm and I was like, Rebecca West, I think that's an author, huh? But it's like the protagonist of this play. That's interesting. And then later on, I figured out she actually named herself after her. It wasn't a coincidence that they had the same name. Not hitting it big on the stage, Rebecca turned to writing to support herself. She reviewed books for literary journals. In 1912, one such review condemning an H.G. Wells book for anti-feminism caught the interest of Wells, who arranged a meeting with his intriguing reviewer. The meeting between the two led to a 10-year love affair, though not to a marriage. In fact, Wells was already married at the time. In 1914, Rebecca bore H.G. Wells a son named Andrew. Interestingly, during this time period when Rebecca is birthing the child of a married man, Rebecca wrote the short story Indissoluble Matrimony, as if it is indissoluble, and it may have been for H.G. Wells because he stayed married during that whole time. So I don't know, it could be an interesting commentary on that, right? She wrote it in 1914, and it examines sex antagonism in marriage. So antagonism between the sexes. That will become quite apparent the second you start reading it, or maybe not the second, but soon thereafter. A lot of antagonism between the biological sexes in that short story. Needless to say, Rebecca became very cognizant of the problems and predicaments of unwed mothers in the early 20th century. For instance, wanting still to concentrate on her professional writing career, Rebecca, who had care of her and Wells's son, often left Andrew with institutions. In later years, Andrew deeply resented what he considered his mother's abandonment of him and wrote a book about his relationship with his parents. Curiously, Andrew condemned his mother, but esteemed his absent father, who spent even less time with Andrew than his mother did, and who was married when he conceived Andrew with Rebecca. So, an interesting take on those family relationships. Anyway, Rebecca had the book's publication suppressed in England until after her death. Despite her radical feminist views on free love, Rebecca eventually married banker Henry Maxwell Andrews in 1930. She continued to write such political commentaries as Black Lamb and Gray Falcon, a travel book that condemned Nazism and Nazis. Gradually, however, Rebecca shifted from 1920s radical feminist, socialist, to conservative anti-communist. She was even named Dame Commander of the British Empire, despite anti-imperialist writings in her younger days. So, enjoy reading more of Rebecca West's life and times and her really intriguing short story about a battle of the sexes in the marital relationship of Evadne and her husband in Indissoluble Marriage. Enjoy.